All right. So Governor Gavin Newsom of California, he signs legislation to prevent gas price spikes and save California's money. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Soon as he does that, Phillips 66 says, we're shutting these 2 refineries down in California. What's that going to do to the supply of gasoline? What's that going to do to the cost of gasoline? Where is California gonna get their gas? Let's get into it. Here we go. So here's kind of the nuts and bolts of what you need to know. New measure will help prevent price spikes that cost Californians upwards of $2 billion last year, giving the state more tools to require that petroleum refiners backfill supplies and plan ahead for maintenance. All right, so you got this ABX 2-1 authored by yada yada. It allows the state to require oil refiners to maintain a minimum inventory of fuel to avoid supply shortages that create higher gas prices for consumers. It also authorizes the California Energy Commission to require refiners to plan for resupply during refiner maintenance outage. After that took place, oil company Phillips 66 says it will shut down Los Angeles area refinery. So now California goes from 11 refiners to 8. They're already importing I think 8% of their oil. And now you've got this one shutting down. And then you're going to have possibly another 2 refineries behind that. So, this whole notion of getting away from gasoline-powered vehicles, you're a long ways off. You're a long ways off any of this taking place. And yet Gavin Newsom, he's trying to say that this is for the consumer. And you're like, okay, but this is just going to constrict supply. And now you're going to have to bring gas in from, here's where we go. India, South Korea, the Middle East. That's where California will get its gasoline when the Phillips refinery shuts down. Oh, that's swell. And how does that gasoline come in? How does that oil come in? On big cargo ships that have horrific carbon emissions. But don't worry about that. We only worry about, the domestic carbon trade-offs and I'm going to trade this credit for that credit and go down that road. And we're conforming. And meanwhile, the carbon emissions go up and prices on gasoline go up. But don't worry, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The shutdown of the Phillips 66 refinery complex in Wilmington and Carson next year will force California to make up for the loss by importing more gas by ocean tanker, which is expected to raise prices to motorists at the pump. I've watched so many videos on this and these regulators like, this has been a project that's been in works for a year. And so we're pretty sure that we'll have our supplies leveled out. Shouldn't be a problem. You're not going to pay any more in gas. Pretty sure. You know what I mean? You're just left with this feeling of, this is just going to get more expensive for you, the consumer in California and other states in the area because California supplies gasoline to other states. So now you've got this ridiculousness, and this is all self-induced. This is all self-induced. California for decades produced enough gasoline to supply almost all of its own needs, but the era of self-sufficiency is coming quickly to an end. Phillips 66 refinery in Wilmington and Carson, what are they? A couple miles apart, I think, but there's a pipeline so it can do all that good stuff. Produces 1.3 billion gallons of gasoline annually, which will leave a huge gap to be filled after its planned closure late next year. With no pipelines into the state and no plans to add new refineries because it's horrific to do in California and nobody's signing up to do that. In fact, the reason that Phillips 66 is saying that they're closing down these plants is because this is a non-performing asset for them. It doesn't make sense. It's an old refinery. They need to dump a bunch of money into it. They're not going to go that direction. And guess what? California is not exactly the most conducive to do business in if you're in the oil refining business, right? You've got regulation after regulation after regulation under the guise of protecting the consumer. And you know what? Doesn't California already have some of the highest gasoline prices in the United States, if not the highest? But anyway, overlook that scooch of a detail, but yeah, we'll just move on. Californians will need to make up for their deficit by imports via ocean tanker, and what analysts say will be a costly endeavor and one with inherent risks of supply disruptions. Doesn't that sound like just leveling the price out? I mean, okay, this is really expensive to bring this in. It's going to increase carbon emissions. And then we don't know. I mean, what happens if something happens in the Middle East, or what countries do we have here? India, South Korea, the Middle East. You got a war? Can't bring this stuff in? Your supply gets cut off. Boop. Prices to the moon, I say. So this is going to make California even more dependent on a longer supply chain. Remember, off the coast of California, we had all those ships just floating as they were coming into the California port there. Yeah. Think longer supply chain. Yeah. I mean, this is going to work out fine, I'm sure. Not only will we see average upward pressure on prices, but probably volatility to prices as well, meaning they're just going to go up. I mean, you don't know what they're going to do because you don't have your consistent supply, and with longer supply chains that are exposed to other stuff going off of the land of the good old USA, anything could happen, right? California imports about 1.1 billion gallons of gas annually, or 8% of its supply, following other refinery closures or conversions in recent years. And with the loss of the Phillips plant, the state will need to import as much as 17% of its supply to make up the deficit. 17%. And that is only if there's another couple of refineries that are saying, hey, anything is on the table. We don't know what we're going to do. Maybe we sell to somebody else, but maybe we shut her down too. I mean, you're just constricting that supply, constricting that ability to create gas from oil further and further. But I'm sure it'll work out fine. I mean, this is in the best interest for the consumer. The potential sources include South Korea, Japan, India, and other Asian refineries, Britain and the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. All right. Gasoline tankers voyage to California from Singapore, another gasoline supplier, would take 30 to 40 days, York said, and the supply chain snags caused by, say, I don't know, a typhoon or a war or a worldwide outbreak of some just random virus, it could add weeks to that lengthy schedule if not disrupting it entirely. So let's go ahead. Let's restrict local. Let's create energy dependence upon some other random countries that, actually produce some of their own. And this is going to save the consumers money. I am sure of it. Plus, it's really, really going to help that carbon footprint. It is. I mean, I'm sure of it. Somehow, somewhere. Doesn't this whole thing just sound like a scam? It sounds like a massive scam to me. Just doesn't make any sense. We're just trying to push everybody to these electric cars that ain't coming anytime soon. That's just not happening. Even before the Phillips news, the state was fretting about possible supply shocks should more refineries shut down. Well, when you make it harder to do business, guess what? That's what happens. When businesses look at their portfolio and go, oh, that one's in California. Good Lord, let's shut that bad boy down because we ain't making money. We have to dump a bunch of money into it because it's an old refinery and we got to do all this maintenance and stuff. Boop. Yeah. Close her down. When Phillips 66 announced the planned closure last week, it pledged to work with California to maintain current levels and potentially increase supplies. That is nonsense. That is just talk. That's just, hey, this is what we're doing. We're kissing you on the way out, right? No details were offered either by the company or by state officials. Hey, we're going to somehow close down and then potentially increase supplies. Unlike most states, California has no pipelines to import refined gasoline from other U.S. refineries, making the state what policymakers call a fuel island. It sounds like a grocery island or a grocery desert, right? Ain't nothing there, and there's none around for a long, long ways. And there are no pipelines to move gasoline between Northern California and Southern California, making the Southland even more of an archipelago. If you're a consumer in California, if you put gasoline into your rig, this is not good news. This is why so many folks are leaving California, because of leadership like this. They're all worked up over, carbon emissions and all kinds of other crap. And do they need to be? Well, they certainly seem to think so, right? Meanwhile, you pay the tab at the pump. Gasoline refineries in the U.S. Gulf Coast are an unlikely source. Federal Jones Act requires that only U.S. flagships, get this, only U.S. flagships may transit from one U.S. port to another, an expensive proposition given that the vessels must be manufactured in the U.S. and manned by U.S. crews. Even more unlikely is the opening of new refineries in California, given state mandates on all electric cars and trucks. So you've got no more refineries coming online. You've got the old ones closing up shop, and now you've got energy independence going right out the window, right? Hey, let's go get some oil from the Middle East. This should work out great. Some replacement gasoline could come from refineries in Washington State, where I am, using Jones Act approved vessels, but most gasoline will have to be shipped in from other nations. Why are we doing that? That makes no sense. Is Trump going to stop this? Is Trump going to step in and go, boys, I don't know. God bless America. I think we keep it local. Who knows, right? There's so many layers of ridiculous restrictions and stuff on this kind of crap. Shipping gasoline also adds to environmental problems. Oh, hey now. You're telling me that it's not going to get better before it gets worse. Ocean vehicles are heavy polluters, most of them running on what's called heavy fuel oil, thick tar-like residue left over after refining other petroleum products. And while the state is committed to major reductions in greenhouse gases, it doesn't count emissions released by ocean tankers sailing more than 100 miles from the California coastline. So most of the emissions from tankers delivering gasoline won't be included in the state's greenhouse gas reduction calculations, similar to the way the federal government counts emissions. Does this make this make sense? How does this make sense? How is this gonna reduce the cost of gasoline to the consumer? I'm not holding my breath here. It's kind of like here in Washington State, where our governor told us, we got this carbon tax and it's just going to be pennies on the dollar. And Washington State has the second highest fuel prices in all the country. Yeah, it's pennies on the dollar. 99 pennies on the dollar, but who's counting? Most of the unrefined crude oil processed in California arrives by ships from foreign ports. State policies have drastically reduced the amount of crude pumped from California's oil fields, and foreign imports account for more than 60% of the total, over a third of that from Iraq and Saudi Arabia. This should work out just fine. Yeah, prices are going to go up. This whole thing of leveling out the supply, that to me appears just like a total misnomer. But what do I know? I'm a real estate guy, right? But just on the outside, this doesn't look like we're going down the road. Oh, hey, gas prices are going to drop. Now, you've already got so many different factors in here that effectively shrink the supply of what ends up at the consumer's pumps. And when that happens, prices go up. That's how this works. Demand and supply. The gasoline that California produces and imports is the world's cleanest. Okay? That's the self-imposed part of this equation, right? Didn't have to be there. And the kind of gas that, the kind of oil that they need to bring in and then they refine it to, it's way beyond what other states in the United States have. And again, makes it more difficult to refine and creates a supply issue because you can't just bring oil in and refine it from anywhere because it's got to be this special blend. or least dirty anyway. The world's cleanest or least dirty. In the early 1990s, California began requiring cleaner burning gasoline known as carbob. The State Energy Commission said the California blend has reduced pollution, cleaned the air, and improved health, including an 80% reduction in cancer risk associated with gasoline pollution. But the state's unique blend comes at extra cost, and some overseas refineries may have to adjust their processes to accommodate increased demand. Okay, so we're just more and more reliant upon out there. For years, the state has anticipated the closure of gasoline refiners as car buyers turn to electric vehicles. But are they really? I mean, I've heard electric car sales have been going down, that we kind of got to that point where manufacturers had to drop prices ridiculously in order to get them moved because you don't have enough charging stations, especially in California. That whole notion of, well, past 2035, we're not going to be doing any gas cars at all. It's like, okay, that's probably not happening. There's just no way, right? It was a nice idea and it was a goal, but sometimes we don't reach our goals because they don't make any sense. It was like President Joe Biden said that, we're probably going to be, and this was in his last State of the Union address, probably going to be dependent upon fossil fuels for at least the next 10 years. And he's literally looking around like, this could happen. It might. No. Especially on a worldwide basis. No. Not even close. You got years. This transition will take decades, though, and policymakers were hoping the pace of refinery closures would closely track a fall-off in gasoline demand. Oh, it's not working out. All right, they're closing, they're selling. Oh, yeah, we got a little shortage. Exactly what they were trying to avoid, and instead, they created, keeping the need for imported fuel to a minimum. That's not happening because what do we got again? We've got India, South Korea, the Middle East. All right, never say never. So you're saying there's a chance gas could go down in price. Well, so the Phillips 66 announcement came as a surprise. Oops. Phillips 66 says it wasn't because of this new regulation, but it's more the overall view of which way is regulation going in California. It's not getting deregulated, I'll tell you that, right? Company said it's closing the Wilmington Carson refinery for strategic reasons. It's like when Walmart closes down. It's not about you. It's about us. We just don't feel like we can operate the store that meet our corporate goals. But hey, visit us at our other stores, not located in your community, and follow us online, and we'll try and get all the employees working at our other stores. Lower profitability compared to other assets in our portfolio. That was the bottom line on Phillips 66. Lower profitability. They weren't making money, and this bad boy is an old oil refinery, and they don't want to dump the money into it. He declined to say why it's less profitable, but the company's most recent annual report offers some hints, saying that California's energy policy could lead to potential adverse effects on our refining, marketing, and midstream operations in California, which may be material to our results of operations, financial condition, profitability, and cash flows. So restrictions in California are impacting their ability to make a buck, to make a profit. And when that happens, you take your worst performing asset and you say, see ya. We'll stick with the other 99 or however many they have total in their portfolio, right? With the shutdown of the Phillips 66 facility, California will be down to 8 from 11 5 years ago. We're not headed in the right direction, folks. Not headed in the right direction. But hey, Gavin Newsom's going to run for president, isn't he? 2028. Sure, that'll be fine. Is this kind of regulation? If this is what you want to see all over the United States, hey, elect him as president, right? So article goes on to say the decline of the refinery industry does have state officials concerned. There's one of my favorite buzzwords, right? It's a triggering word. I have concern. In a report this year, the Energy Commission said that peak demand and supply capacity for gasoline is very tight, and that a strategy to bolster the state's imports at gasoline will be imperative to avoid potential systemic undersupply problems. Okay, with this regulation, aren't we trying to address undersupply problems and intended to address the levels of reserve? It just feels like this is just getting monkeyed with. And you know who's going to pay? The consumer. Yeah. Hey, why is our gasoline $8 a gallon? Well, because of that stuff that guy said. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, Governor Gavin Newsom has gone on the warpath against the oil industry. Oh, he's hopping mad. He doesn't like them. So dirty, so dirty. He's called 2 special legislative sessions over 2 years to pass what he called price gouging legislation. You know what? This is a standard Democrat-run con game, isn't it? Now we got price gouging going on. Oh, they're gouging you. It's not the regulation we've put on top of them. They're gouging you. I mean, Kamala Harris ran on that. How did that work out for her? Yeah. Did she win the election? Did she win the 2024? No. Landslide to the other guy? Massive landslide? And they took the Senate? And he kept the House? Yeah, weird. They won the popular vote? Weird again. The 2023 bill created a special unit to investigate refinery, pricing practices, and potentially fine violators. All of this stuff, consumers just going to pay more at the pump. This month, he signed a bill authorizing state agencies to require minimum levels. We talked about that. And then we got some people saying, hey, this is going to be fine. How do we measure cost to consumers in a complicated thing and an easy thing done demagogue? Well, we're trying to transition to electric vehicles to reduce climate emissions because we have to. There are no other options. No, you still got a lot of gasoline. You can just drill, baby, drill. Yeah. No, we can't do that. We can't be having that. It's not environmentally sensitive. That's why I think this whole thing is just an enormous racket. It's just a ruse. Such views draw counter arguments from state. Okay, now they're going to get into arguing about this and that. Instead of sending oil, this is a good one. Instead of sending oil 120 miles in a pipeline to a refinery that delivers to a gas station, you're extending the supply chain, which adds to volatility and expense, she said in written remarks. It's not as if we're not using oil and gasoline here. We're just not getting it from people who have jobs here. Yeah, I mean, and if you're bringing it in from out of the country, which we bring a lot of goods in from outside of the country, right? It's called imports. But when you've got the ability to do refinery on your own ground, there's just no incentive for that. This is California pushing out yet another big business. During the pandemic, how many businesses did we say, just went, see ya, gotta go. I'm headed to Texas. I'm headed to Austin, headed to Dallas. I'm headed to Houston. I'm headed to wherever. And Phillips 66 is literally a Houston company, right? And they're shutting this bad boy down. And I don't think this will be the last refinery that says, too costly, too much regulation, not making enough money. How many other options do you have? And then the supply of gasoline, it almost feels like the supply of gasoline, they want it to go to zero in California. Let's just make it outrageously expensive to drive a gas-powered car, and everybody will get an electric vehicle. Yeah. Is that going to happen? Just the direction that this is following. That's what everybody's concerned about, right? It's the direction this is going. Oh, yeah. It's not going to result in cheaper prices at the pump. No. That is a misnomer. That is my opinion. This is news for reasonable people. This is not news for overly optimistic people. And with that, I end my podcast. Thanks for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.